The morning sun painted the Montana sky in shades of orange and pink as Jake loaded his old pickup truck with hay bales. At 52, his weathered hands moved with the practiced ease of someone who had been working this land for over 30 years. The ranch that once buzzed with laughter and life now felt too quiet, too empty since his wife passed away 3 years ago. Jake climbed into his truck and headed toward the far pasture to check on his cattle. The gravel road crunched under his tires as he drove past rolling hills dotted with wildflowers. This was his favorite time of day, when the world felt peaceful and full of promise. As he rounded a bend near the creek, something caught his eye. There, lying motionless beside a fallen log, was a young woman. Jake slammed on his brakes and jumped out of the truck, his heart racing. The girl looked to be in her early 20s, with long brown hair spread around her like a dark halo. Her clothes were expensive-looking but torn and dirty, as if she had been walking through rough terrain for hours. Jake knelt beside her and gently checked for a pulse. Relief flooded through him when he felt the steady beat under his fingers. She was alive, but her skin felt hot and dry. Dehydration, he thought. Living this far from town, Jake had learned basic first aid over the years. "Miss, can you hear me?" he called softly, but she didn't respond. Jake carefully lifted the unconscious girl, surprised by how light she felt in his arms. As he carried her toward his truck, her torn jeans shifted, revealing her lower leg. What he saw there made him stop dead in his tracks. On her shin was a birthmark shaped exactly like a crescent moon. Jake's breath caught in his throat as memories came flooding back. 26 years ago, his wife Linda had told him about a baby she had given up for adoption when she was just 17. A baby girl born with a distinctive crescent-shaped birthmark on her leg. "It was the hardest thing I ever did," Linda had whispered to him on their wedding night, tears streaming down her face. "I was so young, and I had no way to care for her. But not a day goes by that I don't think about my little girl and wonder if she's happy, if she's safe." Jake had held his wife that night as she cried, promising her that someday, if it was meant to be, they would find her daughter. But Linda had been too afraid to search, worried that she might disrupt the life her daughter had built with her adoptive family. Now staring at the crescent moon birthmark, Jake felt like he was looking at a ghost. Could this really be Linda's daughter? The daughter they had both hoped to meet someday? His hands trembling slightly, Jake carefully placed the young woman in the passenger seat of his truck and drove as quickly as he dared back to the ranch house. Every few seconds he glanced over at her peaceful face, searching for any resemblance to his beloved Linda. Back at the house, Jake carried her to the guest bedroom that Linda had always kept ready for visitors. He placed her gently on the bed and covered her with one of Linda's handmade quilts. Then he called Doc Morrison, the only doctor in their small town. "Doc, I need you to come out to the ranch right away," Jake said into the phone. "I found a young woman unconscious by the creek. She's breathing but won't wake up." "I'll be there in 20 minutes, Doc Morrison replied without hesitation. While waiting for the doctor, Jake sat in the chair beside the bed, studying the girl's face. She had Linda's high cheekbones and the same stubborn chin. Her hair was the exact shade of brown that Linda's had been when they first met. But it was more than her physical features that made Jake's heart race. There was something about her presence that felt familiar, like she belonged here. Jake's eyes kept drifting to that crescent moon birthmark. Linda had described it perfectly, down to the way it curved slightly to the left. She had told him that when her baby was born, the doctor said he had never seen such a distinctive birthmark. "It's like she's marked by the moon itself," Linda had said with a sad smile. "Maybe that means she's destined for something special." Doc Morrison arrived and immediately went to work examining the unconscious girl. After checking her vital signs and looking her over carefully, he turned to Jake with a reassuring smile. "She's severely dehydrated and exhausted, but she's going to be fine," the doctor said. "Looks like she's been walking for a long time without enough water or food. Her body just shut down to protect itself. With some rest and fluids, she should wake up in a few hours." Jake felt a wave of relief wash over him. "Should I take her to the hospital in town?" Doc Morrison shook his head. "No need. Sometimes the best medicine is a quiet place to rest." Just make sure she drinks plenty of water when she wakes up. I'll check on her tomorrow." After the doctor left, Jake sat vigil beside the bed. He found himself talking to the unconscious girl, telling her about the ranch, about Linda, about the life they had built together in this peaceful corner of Montana. "If you really are Linda's daughter," he whispered, "then welcome home. She never stopped loving you, never stopped hoping she would see you again." As the afternoon sun slanted through the bedroom windows, Jake noticed the girl's eyelids beginning to flutter. Her breathing changed, becoming lighter and more regular. She was starting to wake up. Jake leaned forward in his chair, his heart pounding with anticipation and hope. In a few moments, he might finally meet the daughter Linda had dreamed about for so many years. The daughter who had been lost but might now be found. The girl's eyes opened slowly, blinking in the gentle afternoon light. They were green, just like Linda's had been. Jake felt tears sting his eyes as she turned her head and looked directly at him. "Where am I?" she asked in a voice that was soft and confused. "You're safe," Jake replied gently. "You're at my ranch. I found you unconscious by the creek this morning." The girl tried to sit up, but Jake put a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Easy now. The doctor says you need to rest and drink some water. You've been through quite an ordeal." As she accepted the glass of water Jake offered, her eyes wandered around the room, taking in the simple furniture, the handmade quilts, and the family photos on the dresser. Something in her expression made Jake wonder if she felt the same strange sense of familiarity that he did. "What's your name?" Jake asked softly. "Amy," she replied, then paused as if she wasn't entirely sure. "Amy Chen. At least that's the name I've always gone by." Jake's heart skipped a beat. If this really was Linda's daughter, then Chen would be her adoptive family's name, not her birth name. "How did you end up way out here, Amy? The nearest town is 15 miles away." Amy's face clouded with confusion and sadness. "I was looking for someone I've never met but have been searching for my whole life. I had a lead that brought me to this area, but I got lost. I've been walking since yesterday, trying to find my way." Jake felt goosebumps rise on his arms. "Who were you looking for?" Amy looked down at her hands, clearly struggling with whether to trust this stranger who had saved her life. "My birth mother," she finally said. "I was adopted when I was a baby, and I've been trying to find out where I came from. All I have is a name in the town where I was born." Jake's mouth went dry. "What name?" "Linda Rodriguez," Amy whispered. She would be in her 40s now. "I know it's a long shot, but I had to try." The room fell silent except for the ticking of the old grandfather clock in the hallway. Jake stared at Amy, hardly able to believe what he was hearing. Linda's maiden name had been Rodriguez. Amy noticed his shocked expression. "Do you know that name? Do you know Linda Rodriguez?" Jake took a deep breath, knowing that his next words would change both of their lives forever. "Amy," he said gently, "I think you found exactly who you were looking for." Amy's green eyes widened as she stared at Jake, her water glass trembling in her hands. "What do you mean I found who I was looking for? Do you know Linda Rodriguez?" Jake felt his heart hammering against his ribs. He had imagined this moment countless times over the years, but now that it was here, he didn't know how to begin. How do you tell someone that the mother they've been searching for their entire life was the woman you loved and lost? "Linda Rodriguez was my wife," Jake said quietly, watching Amy's face carefully. "But she passed away 3 years ago." The color drained from Amy's face, and the water glass slipped from her fingers, spilling across the quilt. Jake quickly reached for a towel to clean it up, giving Amy a moment to process this devastating news. "She's gone?" Amy whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm too late?" Jake sat back down and looked directly into Amy's eyes, those same green eyes that had captivated him when he first met Linda 30 years ago. "Amy, before I tell you anything else, I need to ask you something. Do you have any identifying marks? Anything that might prove who you are?" Amy looked confused by the question but slowly pulled up her pant leg, revealing the crescent moon birthmark. "Just this," The adoption agency told me I was born with it. Jake felt tears spring to his eyes. Linda told me about that birthmark on our wedding night. She described it exactly, down to the way it curves to the left. She said it looked like you were marked by the moon itself. Amy's hand flew to her mouth as understanding began to dawn on her face. Are you saying that that she was really my mother? I believe she was, Jake said gently. And if that's true, then you're the daughter she thought about every single day for 26 years. Amy began to cry. Not the quiet tears of sadness, but the overwhelming sobs of someone who has carried a lifetime of questions and finally found an answer. Jake moved to sit on the edge of the bed and awkwardly patted her shoulder, unsure of how to comfort this young woman who might be his stepdaughter. She wanted to find me? Amy asked between sobs. More than anything, Jake replied. But she was scared. She thought maybe you were happy with your adoptive family and didn't want to disrupt your life. She made me promise that if anything ever happened to her, I would look for you and tell you how much she loved you. Amy wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. My adoptive parents died in a car accident when I was 16. I've been in and out of foster homes ever since. Aging out of the system 2 years ago, I've been completely alone, wondering if anyone in the world was related to me. Jake's heart broke for this young woman who had experienced so much loss. You're not alone anymore, Amy. If you really are Linda's daughter, then you have family. You have me. Amy looked around the room again, this time with new eyes. She lived here? In this house? For 15 years, Jake nodded. We built this life together. She loved this ranch, loved taking care of the animals, loved watching the seasons change over these hills. Amy stood up slowly, still weak but driven by curiosity. She walked to the dresser where several framed photographs sat. Her hands shook as she picked up a picture of Linda standing beside a horse, her brown hair catching the sunlight, her green eyes sparkling with joy. She looks just like me, Amy breathed. Or I look just like her. The resemblance is incredible, Jake agreed. When I first saw you lying by that creek, something about your face looked so familiar. Now I know why. Amy picked up another photograph, this one showing Linda and Jake on their wedding day. Linda wore a simple white dress and held a bouquet of wildflowers, her smile radiant with happiness. Tell me about her, Amy said, sitting back down on the bed with the wedding photo clutched in her hands. Tell me everything. For the next 2 hours as the afternoon faded into evening, Jake shared stories about Linda. He told Amy about how they met at a county fair where Linda was showing her prize-winning apple pie. He described Linda's love for animals, especially the way she could calm even the most skittish horse with just her voice. She had this laugh, Jake said with a soft smile. It was like music, and it could fill this whole house with joy. When she laughed, everyone around her couldn't help but smile too. Amy hung on every word, hungry for details about the mother she had never known. She learned that Linda loved to garden, and that her roses still bloomed every summer behind the house. She found out that Linda could cook anything but was terrible at keeping houseplants alive. She discovered that Linda had dreamed of becoming a teacher but had put those plans aside to help Jake run the ranch. She sounds wonderful, Amy said softly. I wish I could have met her. She would have loved you so much, Jake replied. She always worried about whether you were happy, whether you felt loved, whether you knew that giving you up was the hardest thing she ever did. As the sun set outside, Jake made dinner for both of them. Amy followed him to the kitchen, still wearing the clothes she had been found in, still trying to process everything she had learned. The kitchen was clearly Linda's domain. Her recipes were still pinned to a bulletin board. Her favorite coffee mug still sat by the sink, and her apron still hung on a hook by the stove. Amy touched the apron gently, as if trying to connect with the mother she had never known. It's like she just stepped out for a moment, Amy said quietly. Jake nodded. I haven't changed much since she died. I guess I wasn't ready to let go. They ate dinner mostly in comfortable silence, both lost in their own thoughts. Amy kept glancing around the kitchen, taking in every detail, trying to imagine Linda moving. through this space cooking meals, laughing with Jake. After dinner, Jake showed Amy to Linda's study, a small room lined with bookshelves and dominated by an old wooden desk. Linda had spent hours here, managing the ranch's finances and writing in her journal. She kept a journal? Amy asked, noticing several leather-bound books on a shelf. Jake hesitated. She did. She wrote in it almost every day for 20 years. Did she ever write about me? Jake looked at Amy's hopeful face and made a decision that would change everything. Why don't you see for yourself? He pulled down one of the journals from 1998, the year Amy was born, and handed it to her. Amy's hands trembled as she opened it to a random page and began to read in Linda's careful handwriting. March 15, 1998. I wonder what my baby girl is doing today. Is she learning to walk? Does she have teeth yet? Does she know how much her birth mother loves her? Jake tells me I should try to find her. But what if her new family doesn't want me in their lives? What if seeing me would only confuse her? I pray every night that she's happy and healthy and loved. Amy's eyes filled with tears again as she read entry after entry about herself. Linda had written about wondering what Amy looked like. What her first words were, whether she was good at school, whether she was kind to others. She really did think about me every day, Amy whispered. Every single day, Jake confirmed. She loved you from the moment you were born, and she never stopped loving you. Amy closed the journal and looked at Jake with newfound determination. I want to learn everything about her. I want to know what she loved, what made her happy, how she lived her life. I want to understand where I came from. Jake smiled, the first real smile he had felt in years. Then you'll stay? You'll let me tell you about your mother and show you the life she built here? Amy looked around the study, feeling a sense of belonging she had never experienced before. For the first time in her life, she was in a place where she truly belonged, surrounded by traces of the mother who had loved her from afar. Yes, she said firmly. I want to stay. I want to learn about Linda, about this ranch, about the family I never knew I had. Outside, the Montana night settled over the ranch like a comfortable blanket. Inside, two people who had been strangers, that morning began the process of becoming family, connected by their love for a woman who had brought them together even after her death. Amy fell asleep that night in Linda's bed, clutching the journal to her chest and finally feeling like she had come home. Amy woke the next morning to the sound of roosters crowing and the gentle lowing of cattle in the distance. For a moment she forgot where she was, then the events of yesterday came rushing back. She was at Jake's ranch, sleeping in Linda's bed, holding Linda's journal. Sunlight streamed through the lace curtains and Amy could smell coffee brewing downstairs. She got up and looked out the window at the rolling pastures and distant mountains. Everything looked so peaceful, so different from the crowded foster homes and city apartments she had known her whole life. Downstairs, Jake was making breakfast, humming an old country song under his breath. He looked up when Amy entered the kitchen, and his face broke into a warm smile. Morning, Amy. How did you sleep? Better than I have in years, she replied honestly. There's something about this place that feels so peaceful. Jake poured her a cup of coffee and set a plate of eggs and bacon in front of her. Linda always said this land had healing power. She said when people belonged here, they could feel it in their bones. Amy took a sip of coffee and felt warmth spread through her chest. Jake, I need to ask you something. Are you absolutely certain that Linda was my mother? I mean, the birthmark and everything seems too good to be true. Jake sat down across from her with his own cup of coffee. I've been thinking about that all night. Linda kept more than just journals, Amy. She kept every piece of paper related to your adoption, every document the agency gave her. Would you like to see them? Amy's heart began to race. You mean there might be actual proof? Let's find out together, Jake said gently. After breakfast, Jake led Amy to Linda's bedroom, to a cedar chest at the foot of the bed. He opened it carefully, revealing layers of carefully preserved memories, wedding photos, love letters, and, at the very bottom, a manila envelope marked Baby Girl Rodriguez, 1998. Jake handed the envelope to Amy with shaking hands. Linda made me promise that if we ever found you, I would give you everything in here. Amy opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside were hospital records from her birth, adoption papers, and several photographs. The first document was a birth certificate that made Amy gasp. Baby girl Rodriguez, born March 3, 1998, she read aloud. Mother, Linda Maria Rodriguez. Father, unknown. Her birthday, her exact birthday. Jake pointed to another line on the birth certificate. Look at the physical description, Amy read. Identifying marks. Crescent-shaped birthmark on left shin approximately 2 inches in length. Tears sprang to Amy's eyes as she looked at the photographs. There were pictures of Linda holding a tiny baby in the hospital, both of them looking exhausted, but peaceful. In one photo, Linda was touching the baby's foot, and the crescent moon birthmark was clearly visible. That's me, Amy whispered. That's really me. That's really you, Jake confirmed, his own voice thick with emotion. Amy found a letter at the bottom of the envelope, written in Linda's careful handwriting. The paper was yellowed with age, and it was addressed simply to my precious daughter. With Jake's permission, Amy read the letter aloud. My dearest baby girl, if you are reading this, then God has answered my prayers and brought you back to me. I want you to know that giving you up was not a choice I made lightly or easily. I was 17 years old, alone, and scared. Your father had disappeared when he found out I was pregnant, and my family had disowned me. I spent months trying to figure out how to keep you, but I had no job, no home, no way to provide for you the way you deserved. The adoption agency promised me that you would go to a loving family who could give you everything I couldn't. The hardest moment of my life was when they took you from my arms at the hospital. I held you for 3 days, memorizing your face, your tiny fingers, that beautiful birthmark that made you unique. I sang to you and told you stories and promised you that someday, if it was meant to be, we would find each other again. I have thought about you every single day since then. I have wondered if you were happy, if you felt loved, if you knew that your birth mother never stopped caring about you. I have prayed for your safety, your health, and your happiness. If you are reading this as an adult, I hope you understand that I gave you up because I loved you, not because I didn't want you. I wanted you to have the best possible life, even if that meant living without me. Please know that you are the most precious gift I have ever given to the world. You are strong, you are brave, and you are loved beyond measure. All my love, always and forever, your mother, Linda. By the time Amy finished reading, both she and Jake were crying. Amy clutched the letter to her chest and felt a piece of her heart that had been missing her entire life finally click into place. She really did love me, Amy said through her tears. More than you'll ever know, Jake replied. She talked about you constantly. Every time we passed a school, she wondered if you were a good student. Every time she saw a young woman your age, she wondered if that's what you looked like. You were always with her, even when you weren't. Amy spent the rest of the morning going through every item in the envelope. There were hospital bracelets from her birth, a lock of her baby hair, and even the receiving blanket she had been wrapped in. Linda had kept everything, treasuring these small mementos of the 3 days they had together. Jake, Amy said as they sat together on Linda's bed, surrounded by the evidence of her origins. What was Linda's biggest dream? What did she want most in life? Jake thought for a moment. Besides finding you, she wanted to turn this ranch into something special. She dreamed of having it be a place where people could come to heal, to find peace. She wanted to raise horses and maybe take in rescue animals. But after she got sick, we had to put those dreams aside. Amy looked out the window at the pastures and barns, seeing them with new eyes. What if we could make her dreams come true? What if we could turn this place into what she always wanted it to be? Jake stared at Amy in amazement. You would want to do that? You would want to stay here and help me run this ranch? This is where I belong, Amy said with absolute certainty. I can feel it, just like Linda said. This land, this house, this life she built. It's all part of me, too. I want to honor her memory by finishing what she started. Jake felt hope bloom in his chest for the first time since Linda's death. Are you sure, Amy? Ranch life is hard work. It's not glamorous and the money isn't great. Amy laughed, and Jake was startled by how much it sounded like Linda's laugh. Jake, I've been on my own since I was 16. I've worked 3 jobs at once just to pay rent for a tiny apartment. I've never had a real home or a real family. This isn't just a ranch to me. It's everything I've been searching for my whole life. Jake stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the land he and Linda had worked so hard to build together. She would be so proud of you, Amy. She would be so happy to know that you're here, that you want to carry on her legacy. Then let's do it, Amy said, standing beside him. Let's make this ranch everything Linda dreamed it could be. Let's make it a place where broken things can heal, where lost souls can find their way home. As they stood together looking out at the Montana landscape, Jake felt Linda's presence stronger than he had since the day she died. Somehow, even in death, she had managed to bring them together, to give them both the family they needed. Welcome home, Amy, Jake said softly. Welcome to the family. Amy smiled through her tears and put her hand on Jake's shoulder. Thank you for keeping her memory alive. Thank you for giving me the mother I never got to know. Outside, the wind rustled through the grass, and Jake could almost hear Linda's voice carried on the breeze, telling them both that love never really dies. It just finds new ways to grow. That evening, Amy called the social worker who had handled her case to let them know she was safe and had found family. She arranged to have her few belongings shipped to the ranch and officially changed her address. For the first time in her life, Amy Chen was going home. Not to a place where she was temporarily staying, but to a place where she truly belonged. To a place where her mother's love was waiting for her, preserved in every corner, every memory, every dream that Linda had left behind. As the sun set over the ranch, Amy stood on the front porch and felt the peace that Linda had always promised. She would find she was home. 3 weeks had passed since Amy arrived at the ranch, and Jake couldn't believe how much their lives had changed. Every morning, Amy was up before dawn, eager to learn everything about ranch life. She threw herself into the work with an enthusiasm that reminded Jake so much of Linda it sometimes took his breath away. "Jake, look!" Amy called from the horse paddock one sunny morning. "Buttercup is finally letting me brush her." Jake looked over to see Amy gently grooming Linda's old mare, the same horse that had been skittish and withdrawn since Linda's death. Buttercup had refused to let anyone but Linda near her for 3 years, but somehow Amy had won the old horse's trust. Linda always said Buttercup was a good judge of character, Jake called back, smiling at the sight of Amy's triumphant grin. Amy had a natural way with all the animals that amazed Jake. The chickens followed her around like she was their mother. The cattle came when she called, and even the barn cats had started sleeping on her bed at night. It was as if they recognized something in her that connected her to Linda. But it wasn't just the animals that responded to Amy. Jake watched her confidence grow every day as she learned new skills. She could now milk the cows without help, mend fences that needed repair, and even drive the old tractor around the property. Her hands were getting calloused from the work, but her face glowed with satisfaction every evening. "I never knew I could feel this useful," Amy told Jake one evening, as they sat on the porch after a long day of work. "In the city, I felt like I was just existing, just getting by. Here, everything I do matters. The animals depend on me, the land needs me. I've never felt so needed." Jake nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. Linda used to say the same thing. She said this place gave her purpose. As the weeks turned into a month, Amy began suggesting improvements to the ranch. She wanted to expand the vegetable garden, fix up the old barn that hadn't been used in years, and maybe add some rescue horses to keep Buttercup company. Linda always wanted to take in rescue animals, Jake told her, but we never had the extra money or time. "Well, now we have both," Amy said practically. "I've been looking at our finances, and if we make a few changes, we could easily afford to help some animals that need homes. Jake was constantly amazed by Amy's business sense. She had taken over the ranch's bookkeeping and had already found ways to save money and increase their income. She had negotiated better prices for their feed, found new customers for their eggs, and even started selling Linda's canned vegetables at the local farmer's market. "You're a natural at this," Jake told her one day as she showed him her plans for improving their profit margins. "I think Linda passed down more than just her looks," Amy replied with a smile. "I feel like I understand this life in my bones, like I was always meant to be here." But their peaceful new routine was interrupted. One Tuesday morning when a car pulled into their driveway, Jake and Amy watched from the porch as a woman in a business suit got out, followed by a man with a badge. "Mr. Jake Peterson," the woman called as she approached. "I'm Ms. Martinez from Child Protective Services, and this is Deputy Johnson from the County Sheriff's Office. We need to speak with you about Amy Chen." Jake felt his blood run cold, but Amy stepped forward confidently. "I'm Amy Chen. Is there a problem?" Ms. Martinez looked at Amy with professional concern. "Miss Chen, we received a report that you've been living here with an unrelated adult male. As someone who recently aged out of the foster system, we're required to investigate any potentially unsafe living situations." "Unsafe?" Amy laughed. "This is the safest I've ever felt in my life." Deputy Johnson stepped forward. "Sir, we're going to need to see some identification and ask you some questions about your relationship with Miss Chen." Jake's hands shook as he showed them his driver's license. "Amy is Linda's daughter, my late wife's daughter. She found us, and we've confirmed that through birth records and adoption papers." Ms. Martinez looked skeptical. "Do you have documentation to prove this relationship?" Amy ran into the house and returned with the envelope containing all of Linda's adoption papers. She spread them out on the porch table, showing the birth certificate, the hospital records, and the photographs. "Here's proof that Linda Rodriguez was my birth mother," Amy said firmly. "And here's Jake and Linda's marriage certificate showing that Jake was my stepfather." Ms. Martinez examined the documents carefully while Deputy Johnson looked around the property. After 20 minutes of questions and paperwork review, Ms. Martinez seemed satisfied that everything was legitimate. "The relationship appears to be genuine," she told Deputy Johnson. "However, I am concerned about the speed with which this living arrangement was established." Jake felt anger rising in his chest. "Are you saying Amy should have stayed in some foster home instead of coming to live with her only family?" "I'm saying that major life changes should be handled carefully and legally," Ms. Martinez replied. "Miss Chen, are you certain this is what you want? You're not being pressured or coerced in any way?" Amy looked Ms. Martinez straight in the eye. "I've been searching for my family my entire life. I've never felt more certain about anything. Jake isn't just letting me stay here. He's teaching me about my mother, helping me understand where I came from. This is my home." Deputy Johnson, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke up. "Ma'am, this property is well maintained. Miss Chen appears healthy and happy, and they have documentation proving their family relationship. I don't see any cause for concern here." Ms. Martinez made some notes in her file. "Very well. Miss Chen, here's my card. If you ever need anything or if your situation changes, please don't hesitate to call." After the officials left, Amy and Jake sat on the porch in stunned silence. The visit had shaken both of them, reminding them how fragile their new family bond might seem to outsiders. "Jake," Amy said quietly, "what if they try to separate us? What if they decide this isn't a proper arrangement?" Jake put his arm around Amy's shoulders. "That's not going to happen. You're an adult, you're my family, and this is your home. No one can change that." But the visit had planted seeds of worry in both their minds. That evening, Jake called his lawyer to make sure everything was legally solid. "You might want to consider having Amy officially change her name to include Linda's maiden name," the lawyer suggested. "It would make the family connection even clearer if anyone questions it again." Amy loved the idea. "I want to be Amy Rodriguez Chen," she decided. "That way I honor both Linda and my adoptive parents." The legal name change took several weeks to process, during which time Amy and Jake received another unexpected visitor. Mrs. Peterson, Jake's elderly neighbor, stopped by with a casserole and some news. "I heard through the grapevine that Linda's daughter found her way home. Mrs. Peterson said, studying Amy carefully. My goodness, child, you look just like your mother did at your age. You knew Linda well? Amy asked eagerly. Knew her? Honey, I was at your parents' wedding. Linda talked about you constantly. She showed me your baby pictures at least 100 times. Mrs. Peterson smiled warmly. She would be so happy to know you're here, taking care of Jake and keeping her memory alive. Word spread quickly through their small community that Linda's daughter had come home. The local grocery store owner remembered Linda talking about her lost daughter. The veterinarian recalled Linda's dreams of expanding the ranch to help rescue animals. The pastor at the little church Linda had attended welcomed Amy with open arms. Your mother was beloved in this community, the pastor told Amy. She helped so many people over the years. Seeing you here, continuing her legacy, it's like getting a piece of her back. Amy felt embraced by the entire town in a way she had never experienced. These people had loved Linda, and they welcomed Amy as family simply because she was Linda's daughter. 1 month after the CPS visit, Amy received her official documents showing her new legal name, Amy Rodriguez Chen. She felt like she finally knew who she was completely, Linda's daughter, but also the person her adoptive parents had helped raise. That evening, as they worked together to repair a section of fence that had been damaged in a storm, Amy brought up the subject that had been on her mind for weeks. Jake, I want to start that rescue program Linda dreamed about. I want to turn part of the ranch into a sanctuary for horses that need homes. Jake paused in his hammering. That's a big project, Amy. It would take a lot of work and money. I know, Amy said confidently. But I've been doing research, and there are grants available for animal rescue operations. I think we could make it work. Jake looked at this determined young woman who had transformed his life in just 2 months. She had Linda's stubborn streak, her big heart, and her unwavering belief that they could make a difference in the world. All right, Jake said with a grin. Let's make your mother's dream come true. As the sun set over the ranch that evening, Amy felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had found her family, claimed her identity, and discovered her purpose. The scared young woman who had collapsed by the creek 2 months ago was gone, replaced by someone who knew exactly where she belonged. The ranch was beginning to feel like the home Linda had always envisioned, a place where broken things could heal and lost souls could find their way. And Amy Rodriguez Chen was ready to spend the rest of her life making that dream a reality. 6 months had passed since Amy first opened her eyes in Linda's bedroom, and the ranch had been completely transformed. What had once been a quiet, lonely place was now bustling with life and purpose. The rescue horse program Amy had dreamed about was not only real but thriving beyond their wildest expectations. Morning, Beauty, Amy called to a rescued mare as she filled the water troughs. Beauty had arrived 3 months ago, starved and afraid, but under Amy's patient care, she had blossomed into a healthy, trusting horse. Jake watched from the barn doorway as Amy moved among the 6 rescue horses they now housed. Each horse had its own story of neglect or abandonment, and each had found healing on Linda's land. Amy had a special gift for connecting with damaged animals, helping them learn to trust again. You know what your mother would say if she could see this place now? Jake called to Amy. Amy looked up with a smile that had become as familiar to Jake as his own reflection. She'd say we were finally using this land the way God intended. The rescue program had brought more than just horses to the ranch. Volunteers came regularly to help with care and maintenance. Local schools brought children for educational visits. The veterinarian had become a regular fixture, donating much of his time to help the rescued animals. But the biggest change wasn't in the ranch itself, it was in Jake. The lonely, grieving widower had been replaced by a man with purpose and family. Amy had not only brought Linda's dreams to life, but had also brought Jake back to life. Amy, there's something I need to show you, Jake said one crisp autumn morning. Something I've been saving for the right time. He led her to Linda's study, to the same cedar chest where they had found the adoption papers months ago. But this time, Jake reached into a hidden compartment Amy had never seen. Linda made me promise to give this to you only after you had been here long enough to know for sure that you wanted to stay, Jake explained as he pulled out a thick envelope. Amy's name was written on the outside in Linda's careful handwriting, along with the words, "For my daughter, when she finds her way home." Inside the envelope was a legal document that made Amy gasp. It was a will, dated just 2 months before Linda's death, leaving the entire ranch to my daughter Amy, should she ever return to us. "She left me the ranch?" Amy whispered, hardly believing what she was reading. "She left you everything?" Jake confirmed. "The land, the house, the animals, everything. She also left instructions that I should stay on as long as I wanted, to help you run the place and to tell you stories about her." Amy stared at the document, tears flowing down her cheeks. "Jake, I can't take your home away from you. This place is as much yours as it was hers." Jake smiled and pulled another paper from the envelope. "That's why she also had this drawn up, a partnership agreement. She wanted us to run the ranch together, as family. She wanted to make sure we would both have a home here." At the bottom of the envelope was one final item, a letter addressed simply to Amy. This letter was different from the one she had found months ago. This one was dated just weeks before Linda's death. Amy read it aloud. "My dearest Amy, if you are reading this, then you have found your way home at last. I am writing this letter as I prepare to leave this world, but I am not sad because I know that somehow, someway you will find Jake and he will find you. I have watched Jake grieve for me these past months, and I know that when I am gone, he will be lost. But I also know that you will be lost too, searching for the family you never knew. I believe that God will bring you two together and that you will heal each other's broken hearts. This ranch was always meant to be a place of healing. Jake and I started that work, but we could never finish it. I believe that you and Jake, working together, will turn this place into something beautiful, a sanctuary where broken things can become whole again. You are stronger than you know, braver than you feel, and more loved than you can imagine. The blood of generations of strong women runs in your veins. Your great-grandmother came to this country with nothing but hope. Your grandmother raised 6 children during the Great Depression. I may have given you up, but I never gave up on you. Take care of Jake for me. He has been the love of my life, and he will be the father you never had if you let him. Take care of this land that has been in our family for 3 generations, and most importantly, take care of yourself. You deserve all the happiness in the world. Welcome home, my precious daughter. Welcome home. All my love, now and always, Mom, bye." The time Amy finished reading, both she and Jake were crying. Amy folded the letter carefully and held it against her heart. "She knew," Amy said softly. "Somehow she knew we would find each other." "Linda always believed that love was stronger than death," Jake replied. "She believed that the people we love find ways to take care of us even after they're gone." Amy looked around the study, seeing it with new eyes. This wasn't just the room where Linda had managed the ranch finances. It was the room where Linda had planned for Amy's future, where she had made sure her daughter would always have a home. "Jake," Amy said, "I want to add something to this partnership agreement." "What's that?" "I want you to be legally recognized as my father. I want to be Amy Rodriguez Peterson. I want us to be a real family, not just on paper, but in every way that matters." Jake's eyes filled with tears again. At 52 years old, he had never expected to become a father, but Amy had given him that gift along with so many others. "Are you sure?" he asked. "That's a big step." "I've never been more sure of anything," Amy replied. "You've taught me everything about Linda, about this land, about what it means to have a family. You're not just my stepfather, you're my dad." The legal paperwork took several weeks to complete, but on a sunny December morning, Amy Rodriguez Peterson officially became Jake's adopted daughter. The small courthouse ceremony was attended by half the town, all of whom had watched their unusual family story unfold with fascination and joy. After the ceremony, they held a celebration at the ranch. Neighbors brought food, the rescue horses wore ribbons in their manes, and even Buttercup seemed to understand that this was a special day. Pastor Williams, who had known Linda well, said a blessing over their new family. Linda always said that God works in mysterious ways, he told the gathered crowd. Looking at Jake and Amy today, I think we can all see the truth of that statement. As the sun set on their celebration, Amy and Jake stood together on the front porch, looking out over the land that was now officially theirs to share. "Dad," Amy said, testing out the word that felt so natural now. "What do you think Mom would say if she could see us today?" Jake smiled and put his arm around his daughter's shoulders. "I think she would say that her two most important prayers were finally answered. She prayed that you would find your way home, and she prayed that I would find a reason to keep going after she was gone." Amy leaned against Jake's shoulder, feeling completely at peace for the first time in her life. "I used to think I was an orphan with no family and no place to belong. Now I know that I was never really alone. Mom was watching over me the whole time, making sure I would end up exactly where I needed to be." As winter settled over the ranch, Amy and Jake made plans for the coming year. They would expand the rescue program, maybe add some rescue dogs to go along with the horses. Amy wanted to start offering riding therapy for children who had experienced trauma, knowing that the healing power of animals could help others the way it had helped her. The ranch that had once been quiet and lonely was now full of life, laughter, and hope. Volunteers came and went, bringing energy and new ideas. The rescued animals thrived under Amy's care, and Jake, who had thought his life was over when Linda died, discovered that it was actually just beginning a new chapter. On Christmas morning, Amy found one final surprise waiting for her under the tree. It was a small wooden box that Jake had made himself, carved with roses like the ones Linda had grown in her garden. Inside the box were Linda's wedding ring and a note from Jake. "Your mother would want you to have this, to remember that love never really ends. It just finds new ways to grow." Amy slipped the ring onto her right hand where it fit perfectly. As she did, she felt Linda's presence stronger than ever, surrounding her with love and approval. "Thank you, Mom," Amy whispered to the morning air. "Thank you for bringing me home." Outside, snow began to fall gently over the ranch, covering the pastures and barns in a blanket of pure white. The rescued horses stood peacefully in their shelter, safe and cared for. Buttercup nickered softly from her stall, content at last. And in the warm kitchen of the old ranch house, a father and daughter sat down to Christmas breakfast, grateful for the mysterious ways that love had brought them together and made them whole. Amy Rodriguez Peterson was no longer a lost young woman searching for her place in the world. She was home, surrounded by the legacy of a mother's love and the promise of a future filled with purpose, family, and hope. The ranch that Linda had dreamed of, a place where broken things could heal, had finally become reality. And it would continue to be a sanctuary for years to come, guided by the love of a woman who had never stopped believing that her daughter would find her way home.